for ecstasy from some of the people who use it and asks, have they got it wrong?
We only hear about the drug ecstasy when something goes wrong. But at least 25 million tablets are being consumed every year in this country. Taking ecstasy is illegal, but many of the young people who use it regularly say it's safer than a night out at the pub. Is that a judgment based on misinformation? Tonight, Heart of the Matter asks, is ecstasy harmless fun or a dangerous pursuit of pleasure at any price? Ecstasy is known as the love drug. Its users claim it fosters a feeling of harmony and friendship, quite different from the image of drug taking as a lonely activity.
Do you feel horny?
Ben is 21 and a former law student. He had his first experience of so-called dance drugs when he was 17 and has taken ecstasy regularly since. But what's at the heart of this latest youth culture that makes it such an all-embracing phenomenon?
It's the feeling of happiness. I would say once you've done ecstasy once, you'll know that feeling of happiness for the rest of your life, even if you never take it again. It'll be something that will change your views, change the way you perceive things. It does open your eyes. It's a learning experience.
Although ecstasy is firmly rooted in the club scene, there are still many young people who don't use the drug and are attracted to clubbing simply for the dancing and the atmosphere. For Ben, though, the enjoyment is increased by taking it.
The feeling of ecstasy, on the come up, there'll be a gradual disorientation and awakening of the senses. Your hearing will be a lot clearer, your vision may be blurred, but things will seem sharper. You get a tingling on your skin, your hair will stand on end slightly. The rush, as it's known, will just be like a wave going from the bottom of your body all the way up of pure energy.
Whether or not they use the drug, for young people ecstasy still has a strong influence on the music, the clothes and the whole style of the dance scene.
On ecstasy, your vision does change, definitely, and you get like traces, which is like a sparkler moving quickly. People are wearing white gloves, blowing whistles, they've got the glow sticks, they're wearing white suits, fluorescent tops. This is like purely to make it a visual and oral spectacle. Brilliant to watch. And the white glove posse, love it, up for it every night.
An estimated 51% of teenagers will have tried an illicit substance by the time they're 16. Here at the Brunel Rooms is the Swindon Drug Link. As in many clubs around the country, such agencies are the only trusted source of advice and information, because these agencies accept that the use of ecstasy is now socially acceptable for young people. Sally Jones believes that any other approach will be rejected.
We know that people are using them, and so we want to provide them with the best information possible on safer drug use. They do respond very well to us being here. They do want the information and they're very positive about us being here.
Like heroin, ecstasy is a Class A drug, and it's not always taken on its own. A whole weekend can be managed with a party pack of drugs. Amphetamine to accelerate the high, ecstasy to give enough energy to dance all night, and cannabis to come down slowly.
After a boring week, or a hard week, or whatever you've been through in the week, as soon as you walk into a club, you can feel the atmosphere. You look around, you see the smiles on people's faces, you see people dancing as if there were no tomorrow. You see strangers meeting, becoming instant friends. You can feel a real happy atmosphere, and it just brings a smile to your face straight away. And that's it for the rest of the night. You'll be there smiling, dancing, meeting new people, feeling at complete ease, feeling part of a group. The feeling of unity is amazing. It is just like one big family.
And for Ben, that is what separates club culture from a night out at the pub. He's not alone. It's common for young people to talk about that sense of belonging and the ability to express themselves. By the time Ben moves on to his local club in Bristol, it's the early hours of the morning.
I know parents of people who go out and use ecstasy are concerned about the well-being of their children. If they actually took the time to realise that their children are being looked after by their friends, are having an absolutely amazing time, dancing, laughing, without any threat from violence, then surely their worries would be eased slightly.
Everyone here's got a smile on their face.
There's no animosity between anyone, anyone can talk to anyone.
The atmosphere in here tonight is the best it's been in a long time. It's wicked, isn't it?
You do, I mean, you get people in here using drugs, you get people in here going straight. Half my friends in here tonight are straight. They're having a brilliant time.
Yeah, it's wicked.
Absolutely perfect environment for a safe, friendly, fun night out.
The girls don't feel threatened, do they?
No. And as for the music,
At least 25 million tablets of ecstasy are taken every year. In 1994, there were 19 ecstasy-related deaths.
Lots of press coverage about ecstasy. It's been a bit, unfair because most people take these drugs and they work or they're students and they just do it in their spare time. And it's something, it makes you a person that you actually want to be, unlike alcohol, which probably you regret things the next day. It's definitely a very social drug.
Everyone's doing it, every club in the country you go to, there's people doing it, and if you make it legal then you're going to make it safe. And because there needs to be some regulation, you know what you're getting, it will be clean. Whereas at the moment, you don't know what you're buying. You can take a pill and that is the reason people are dying, because they don't know what they're buying.
The government has recently launched a campaign giving information on the medical effects of taking ecstasy. But there is still very little known about the long-term effects on regular users.
Obviously, to some extent, I'm concerned about the long-term effects, but until they're actually put down in hard evidence, then they won't concern me as much. I mean, who knows what's going to happen tomorrow? I do take precautions. I'm as safe as I possibly can be when I use the drug. I go out on a weekend and I'll take ecstasy and I feel completely safe. Like I said, the last thing in my mind is, oh, something's going to happen to me tonight.
Each generation has its own youth culture, but is this one peculiarly different? How should we treat an activity that, while illegal, is socially acceptable to a large number of people? Should those who take it be treated like any other hard drug user? In fact, how much do we know of how dangerous it is? Joining Ben for this part of the debate are Chief Constable Keith Halliwell of the West Yorkshire Police, the journalist John Little, who writes for The Independent, Natalie Melton, who's the Safer Dancing Coordinator for the Lifeline Drugs Agency, and Dr. John Henry of the National Poisons Unit at Guy's Hospital in London. Dr. John Henry, how dangerous do you believe it to be, and on what evidence?
Well, first of all, we know that it's dangerous because a number of people have died. The number is not very great, but certainly everyone who takes the drug is taking a risk. It's risk-taking behaviour.
Life's full of risks, though. We want to know how great a risk.
Well, I believe that the risk is very great. We know from animal evidence, not the short-term risk, but the long-term risk. Animal evidence tells us that it damages certain types of nerve terminals. And in fact, if they regrow, they rewire in a different way. Now, there's enough chemical evidence to tell us that in years to come, it's very likely that people who've taken ecstasy in the past will develop depression in higher numbers than the natural occurrence in the population.
Chief Constable Keith Halliwell, people who take ecstasy always quote the statistic. There are 25 million tablets taken a year. So far, there are probably acknowledged to be some 50 ecstasy-related deaths. This makes it appear to be safe.
That's wonderful propaganda for those people who sell ecstasy.
Is it true?
It's wonderful propaganda for the people who take it. They believe they're safe. They're lulled into a false sense of security. No, it isn't true. It isn't true for the simple reason that all the deaths associated with ecstasy are not recorded.
John Little, what do you make of these statistics?
Well, compared with the statistics for alcohol, they still seem incredibly minor. It doesn't really matter what the police think about it, or indeed what I think about it, or even what Ben thinks about it. It just is. It's a phenomenon. It's there. It's not going to go away. Even if the figures were 100 rather than 50 or 150 or 200, I would still wonder about the risk to satisfaction ratio, if you want to use the word satisfaction, or danger.
In the film that we saw, one of the girls there said that one of the great risks was from bad ecstasy. Is that so?
There's no such thing as bad ecstasy. What you can have is a bad trip. Ecstasy itself is a toxic drug. If it's mixed with other things, they're not likely to do you much harm. It's the ecstasy itself that can do you harm.
Natalie, you deal with people who take ecstasy. You try to take a non-judgmental view of the whole thing, but there are certain things that we do know, which is, one, you can reduce the risk. Now, you attend on young people. How can you reduce the risk?
There's certain things that you can do, certainly in a nightclub setting. So we suggest that, you know, water should be freely available at the bar and in the toilets. There should be proper ventilation in a nightclub. There should be information which educates people about drugs. And there should be adequate facilities for people to be able to get away from a hot, crowded dance floor and sit down and relax. Similarly, when we provide information for young people, then we recommend what they should and shouldn't do, ways to reduce risks to themselves.
Now, that all seems very helpful, and I'm sure you're glad of the work that Natalie does, but in a sense, do you think she's colluding in people breaking the law?
I think it's a fine balance, and I think that the debate so far actually seems to take no account of it being an illegal substance and people committing criminal offences for which they could go to prison for a long time. And so I do think that, yes, we need to take precautions. Yes, we do need to have water, we do need to have cool rooms. However, I draw the line at that, because where people are having drug testing to show them that ecstasy is pure or ecstasy is not pure, that is totally leading people into a false sense of security, because ecstasy in its pure form is dangerous and deadly to some people. So that is a total, I'm totally against that sort of drug testing.
We have a real problem here, because, Ben, you believe that young people have been misinformed, don't you, about drugs?
I mean, the safety in clubs is a lot higher than people would expect, because what our older generation can't understand is that people from our generation actually care about each other, genuinely. If someone's sitting down looking ill in a club, I mean, straight away someone's going to go over to them and say, "You all right? Do you need a drink?" And you are looked after.
What do you make of what you've heard about the risks? Do you think of yourself at risk because
No.
you're taking illegal substances?
Oh, obviously the police side. No one likes going out on a Friday night and having to break the law. And that's not something we enjoy doing. But I've never felt under a physical risk.
John, you're older. You've not gone through this stage yet. You're in the middle of it.
I sort of share with Ben this thing that being penalised, you're penalised for taking E in a way that you're not penalised legally for taking alcohol.
Why do you think you're penalised?
This makes me sound like some sort of dope-crazed addict.
So you're a working journalist with a full-time job, a column in a newspaper, and you take ecstasy occasionally at weekends.
Yeah, and I function perfectly well.
It's the fear of the unknown.
Well, it's this idea that if you take something that has the D word, it has, you know, drug involved in it, that somehow you're a gibbering monster or morally incontinent, or you are
a criminal.
Just stupid. And you make informed choices about everything. I think people should make informed choices about the alcohol that they have, or any sort of drug that goes into your body. But because a certain drug has been demonized, doesn't mean that you should be demonized along with it.
Keith Halliwell.
Yes, I think we're back to this argument again of free choice. It is a criminal offence to take the drugs that you take. The law is not criminalising you. You're criminalising yourselves because you choose to take it. You know the consequences, you know the risks, so you take it. It isn't just your own...
Those risks seem to be less than taking, than drinking a pint of whiskey every Friday night.
No, I'm talking about the...
And people aren't criminalised for that. There's a certain hypocrisy at work here. Why aren't you campaigning against alcohol?
I'm talking about...
Or cigarettes, which cause untold misery.
I'm talking about the legal risks, that you are taking a legal risk. You're taking the choice. I don't take it. You take that choice. You're also endangering other people. It's not just yourself. You're endangering
Who
other...
am I endangering on a Friday
If you drive.
night?
If you don't drive.
People
but the people
still
who drive.
and the risks of that are very well
Exactly.
publicised.
Exactly.
And I think you'll find that the majority of young people that, or the people in general that do take ecstasy or any other illicit drug, would say that their #1 fear is of being arrested, of having a criminal record, of being in prison.
Yes,
and
exactly.
they still choose to do it.
I know that
I mean,
to try and explain to an older generation that I use this drug is very, very difficult because people have their stereotypes. Again, ecstasy is something that people don't know anything about except what they've read, except what basically the government have wanted people to read about it. They're trying to scare people off. It hasn't worked and it won't work.
Dr. Henry.
One thing about ecstasy is that it's brand new. It hasn't been around for long. If alcohol had been invented 5 years ago, if cigarettes had been invented 5 years ago, everyone would say, they're marvellous, there's no problem. Cigarettes, you just smoke and that's it. Alcohol, maybe somebody gets a bit stroppy, but there's no real problem. Ecstasy is in exactly the same situation. People are saying, oh, it's marvellous, there's no real problems. We have not yet assessed the amount of damage that ecstasy is going to cost the community in years to come.
How long will it take us to find out?
Years, several
Why?
years, 20, 30 years. Because people are damaging their central nervous systems and the damage is not yet apparent.
Do you ever have depressions after you've come down?
Yeah, and I get through it by saying to myself, I've done drugs at the weekend, I'm going to get depressed. So Tuesday, Wednesday, I'll get depressed. I'll say, right, I had a good weekend and I'm depressed about nothing in particular. I get through it.
And is that like a
hangover, except nowhere near as uncomfortable.
What makes it worth? You're running the known risk that you have of depression, possible long-term effects, risks with the law. What makes it so worthwhile for you to take drugs?
You work it out yourself. If you want to be happy and you're taking a risk, so be it. There's a lot of people who just go through life with a complete wrong outlook on it. At the end of the day, you should be able to stand there on your deathbed saying, I'm happy, I had a good time.
What stand should society take on ecstasy? Taking part in this section of the discussion are Janet and Paul Betts, whose daughter Leah died after taking ecstasy at her 18th birthday party, and the writer and columnist Mary Kenny.
We should condemn it, but we can't. We've gone too far down the road to condemn it. So what we've got to do now is to take in all the information we have about it and treat it in the best possible way we can, and hope that we can educate our primary school children out of it.
Why do you think we've gone too far down the road? What does that mean, Paul?
It's very simply that it's something that has impregnated the youth culture. It's here to stay. Saying no doesn't work. You'll never take them off of it. And hopefully, if we give the elder members of the young society more information, then they can make up their own informed choice.
Now, is that a counsel of despair, or do you really think we should be working now with school children?
It's being realistic.
Mm-hmm.
It's being realistic.
Absolutely.
There is too much money made from it. There are too many people now psychologically hooked on it that really can't see what else they can do at weekends, and it is simply being realistic.
Mary Kenny, this is a problem about addictive behaviour, addictive to anything, isn't it? What do we do about addictive
Well, I certainly don't think we should approve of it simply because it exists. I mean, that's like saying, well, burglary exists, so let's approve of it. We don't have to approve of everything that exists, and I think it's extremely sad.
Accept, I think they would say. Be realistic. Rather.
Well, I think it's extremely sad that people feel that they can't have a nice weekend or that they can't find happiness without actually taking a chemical drug which changes their perception, or that you can't find togetherness, or that you can't find community, or that you can't find spiritual meaning or growth in life without actually taking a chemical drug. And I think that is a failure of culture, it's a failure of society, it's a failure of human beings. And I think it's important to tell young people that there are other marvellous ways of finding happiness, which are true ways.
John, are you a sad generation that can't find happiness without a pill?
No, because I'm, not of the youth generation. I'm 37 years of age. I don't need to take it all the time, so it's not about addictive behaviour. The idea that if you take a pill that you've opted out of culture, relationships, the world, it just strikes me as being a frightening viewpoint. And also, we're talking about these people as being outside society, and they're not outside society, they're part of society. But you're quite right, the culture should be giving them more things, but it isn't, and I'm afraid we're responsible for that, not them.
Should we be condoning it? Should we and giving them more help, information? Is that to condone, or should we simply be saying this is absolutely outright wrong and indicating it to as many people as possible?
If you turn around to say to somebody, don't do it, no, it just doesn't work. And if you talk to a lot of young people, a lot of them do not know the downsides.
What should we be doing, Natalie?
I think that a lot of young people are very keen for that information, though. They want to know what it does to them.
Yes.
But the point is that that information's got to be given to them in a way that they accept and find culturally credible, and which does recognise that they gain an awful lot of pleasure from it as well. And I think that's where we fail time and time again. You can't just tell them that it's wrong, that it's going to harm them. You've got to look at their perspective and work with that as well.
We don't need to condemn or condone. This needs to be managed. And I think managing it is about decriminalising it and putting it... I don't approve of alcohol, curiously enough, and I don't approve of tobacco, curiously enough. But if it's going to be seen in those terms, and I think it should be, then it should be put on a level playing field. It should be managed. If people are going to make money out of it, why shouldn't it be the government? Why shouldn't it be taxed? Why shouldn't it be channeled back into society so that it is actually making some sort of financial contribution, and that we can have qualitative controls on it, and that you do get the information, and if you take a little ecstasy pill, it says this can damage your health, as it does on tobacco.
What do you make of those suggestions?
Actually, isn't it?
Well, alcohol and tobacco is Orwellian. Here are things that kill you, which your government sells to you. That is Orwellian.
That about alcohol and tobacco.
And about chocolate, as well. But yes, but people are going to be... I don't approve of tobacco or alcohol, but people are going to take it, and they are allowed to make informed choices about the substances they put into their bodies. Why shouldn't E be included in that category?
But why shouldn't it? It is. That's what we're trying to do.
That's what we're doing. Firstly, I think we've got to remember that it is illegal to take ecstasy.
But to decriminalise it?
To decriminalise it wouldn't resolve the problem at all. It wouldn't resolve the dangers that people are subjecting themselves to. It wouldn't resolve the issue of people putting chemicals into their body.
Mary?
There is a wider cultural problem, which is that this whole drugs culture is actually a refusal to experience life. It's a refusal to actually feel and taste and know life. It is actually trying to drug yourself so that you don't know what real life is about. And I think that that is the really sad thing, and that we live in a culture which is very, very posited on a notion of instant gratification. If I want happiness, I must have a drug now to give me happiness. Instead of which, actually, human psychology isn't like that. Happiness is something that actually happens to you because you're doing something interesting, or because you're with somebody you love, or some other reason. You don't just take a drug to make you happy, and that's what I find is so sad and negative about it. It's just an artificial, it's an artificial world which is rejecting real experience.
Do you think your daughter was looking for instant happiness? Was she just curious? Why do you think she took it?
Funnily enough, everybody talks about peer pressure with this drug. I actually think that Leah and her friend at that particular time, now, thinking back on it, were taking it to be different, to do something different at their party that they didn't think had been thought of, or that the others weren't going to do.
But was her outlook on life sad, looking for happiness, looking for a high? Curiosity?
Very happy girl, Leah
I
was.
think a challenge on a challenge.
Yeah.
I mean, young people have always challenged. Now the availability of drugs, it's a challenge. They'll challenge society. And also, I mean, what we're talking about in terms of the cultural thing is that our challenge was the cigarette behind the bike shed. The challenge now, the young people, are drugs. One ecstasy tablet can kill you. And that's the difference in terms of the argument.
The young people do not believe that it will. Isn't that so?
You're immortal. From the age of about 18 to 25, you're not going to die. You're not going to become ill. You're going to live forever. Nobody's going to hurt you. And this is the fact.
It's incredible that even after all the publicity that has been over the last few months, you're right, young people do not believe that it will happen to them. Right. And they just say, well, that's a risk I'll take. That's a risk I'm prepared to take. I also think that for you to say that by taking a drug they're not experiencing real life, then for an awful lot of people now, then drug taking is a part of life. It's not an escape. It's not something that they do to get away from the horrors of everyday life, to experience something different. It is just an accepted part of culture.
What's going to happen when they grow out of it, get fed up with it, whatever it is, and they've actually got to face, as you call it, real life every day?
But
What's going to happen to you,
drug
John?
taking is incorporated into their real life. It's not
forever.
No, not forever. And the majority of people, the majority of people will experiment for a few years and then stop. And that may be because they've grown bored of it, because they've got other commitments, because they want to move on to a different phase of their lives. It's not something that they continue to do forever and ever and ever. For the majority of people that do
experiment, what is going to be their support instead? When they get depressed and fed up, what are they then going to use as their support?
But a lot of people...
That's what
I think
worries me.
what I was trying to say is a lot of people aren't taking it because they're depressed and bored. They're not taking it because they're trying to be different, and they're not taking it because it's a challenge. They're taking it because it's there, and it's an accepted part of the life that they lead. It's just... It's like taking like us going out and having a pint, or you going out and having a pint, because I don't do pints. But it's as acceptable as that. It's just part of the fabric of their lives.
Mary, is it any different from a large whiskey?
It is different, and I think it's more anti-intellectual. I think that alcohol, actually, the whole pub culture is about talking, it's about exchanging ideas, it's about getting extremely excited about, telling stories and so on, whereas the drug culture is about killing your intellect, about getting out.
Last word to Natalie.
I think an awful lot of people would disagree with you, and for a lot of people, their best experiences, their most stimulating intellectual experiences have come from taking drugs. And I think that, you may prefer one thing, they may prefer another. I don't think you're in a position to take the moral high ground and say that what you do is better than what they do.
Wait a minute, can I ask this point?
They're not drug addicts. They're not drug addicts.
There shouldn't be a comparison. Alcohol and cigarettes are both damaging and they are both wrong. The point is, with those two, we've gone too far. We don't want to go too far with these mind-altering drugs like ecstasy.
Exactly.
We want to control it now.
The Exodus Collective in Luton is a group of people whose way of communal living is, they say, inspired by experiences in the early days of rave culture. Then they used and enjoyed ecstasy, but now want to recreate that feeling without necessarily resorting to the drug. Encouraging the harmony and sense of belonging they'd known on drugs has been a gradual process. They originally squatted in an abandoned hospice and now have a 7-year tenancy from Luton Council.
There was 10, 11 of us in the early days, and we decided to try to put parties on, dance parties, with a difference. Parties which weren't, their intention wasn't to make the most money out of people. Dancing is a communion. Dancing is something that's, as old as people, as old as time. You go into other tribal Indian cultures, all these kind of things. And dance very often forms a centre of their month. And Exodus, as an extension of that, is about belonging to something. The driving force behind what's happening here is a shared vision of a better way of being, a better way of life, a better, life which isn't based on competition.
Although he doesn't condemn using drugs, Glenn Jenkins believes that the short-term high of dance drugs is not itself a credible way of life. One
of the factors that troubles me, personally, is that people take this nice experience that they might have, you know, on any sort of drug or, you know, good time or whatever. They take it and they you know, they think it's something you can go and do every week and burn themselves out, you know, and seeking this good time. Because, like you say, after 6 o'clock, you've gone home, worn off, back to drudgery, you know, so people pursue that buzz, or rather than try and do what we're doing and build it into your real life, they pursue the drug buzz. So you get people who are emotionally, physically, mentally exhausted. So this is an attempt to base it in reality rather than on drugs or a night out. It is about a sense of belonging, and it is about a need to be part of something more than just like Woolworths or something.
Joining Glenn Jenkins and Mary Kenny for the last part of the debate are Matthew Kalman, who's the editor of New Moon, a radical Jewish youth magazine, and Nicholas Saunders, the author of Ecstasy and the Dance Culture. Glenn Jenkins, people say that they take ecstasy to be happy. Do you think that indicates some sort of spiritual search, that they are seeking happiness in some absolute way?
It might indicate a spiritual dearth, a lack of community and harmony. I think it's more an indictment on society that, you know, people feel they can feel that, you know, on pills and stuff like that.
Can they feel it on pills?
No
What is
doubt.
it they feel?
Well, I mean, in my own personal experience, I haven't taken ecstasy since 1991, but when I was younger, the kind of feeling I got was like a free exchange of love, you know, like a free flow of love. You could love and be loved, and it was like, it put macho and ego and all those things into perspective, not straight away, but over a period of time.
Mary Kenny, that sounds attractive when young people describe it like that. Is that what they're in search of?
People feel very fragmented, perhaps. They don't feel in touch with each other within their community in any sort of natural sense, and so therefore they're seeking a sort of collective feeling of being together and of being in communion with one another through chemical means.
Matthew, what does this tell you about young people in their communities?
Well, being a teenager is a very difficult thing to be. Being part of a religious community that had a tradition of sort of dancing together and sort of getting kind of spiritually high together, you had an excuse to get involved in the kind of physical contact and celebration that it strikes me that some of these people are getting through the parties and through drugs. It put me in mind of sort of religious festivals.
Now, Nicholas Saunders, many people who take ecstasy feel that the ecstasy culture is completely misunderstood by the rest of the world, and you're one of those people, really. What do you think is the basic failure of understanding here?
It's like most of our culture is suppressing the way we express ourselves and the way that we look at ourselves and that we express love to each other, for instance. And it makes us feel awkward and self-conscious when we move. Well, on ecstasy, my personal experience, and I think most people's experience, is just to feel absolutely oneself, one absolute true self.
Is this a quasi-religious experience?
It can be. I don't think it is for everybody by any means.
Do you believe it's spiritual?
Ecstasy is a chemical. I think that some people taking it allow themselves to let go into a spiritual realm, and this is something which they may not even recognize themselves. But I think it is the same thing as a real spiritual experience, yes.
But really, what you're saying is that you want to dismantle civilization, because if we were going to be ourselves, we might, for example, open our bowels in the street if we had no inhibitions, as animals do. But civilization has taught us that there are certain restraints which are necessary for society. But you can find your true self in art, in thinking, in experiencing friendships, in experiencing love, in nature, without actually having to do it with a drug from which you may have a long-term effect, which actually shields you from experience, which doesn't tell you how to come down, and which doesn't actually teach you that there's no such thing as a free lunch. There's always a consequence.
Well, that's a very moralistic view. I don't believe there's no such thing as a free lunch. But I think, again, you've misunderstood. You talked about it shielding you from experience. I think it allows you to have experience. I think if you haven't taken ecstasy, as I think you implied you haven't, you don't know what this feeling is of being very grounded, extremely open, very aware, and truly oneself.
But Glenn Jenkins, you have both been an ecstasy taker and you've withdrawn from the experiences that Nicholas describes. Can you comment on what he says?
Yeah, I mean, I agree largely with a lot of what Nicholas says. I mean, basically, it's not a case of like taking a drug and then dismantling civilization and making it so that what in my actual experience, what actually happened is it showed me a lot of things which are wrong with us as people when we're not on drugs, if you like. You can look at what needs to be done in order to feel more real.
But Matthew, is it a phony experience? These insights that are claimed?
Well, I'm not sure that it is. I mean, I've never taken E, and as we've heard before, the medical evidence as to whether or not it's dangerous or how dangerous it is at the moment is confused. But I think, Mary, you're wrong to place religion and spirituality in a vacuum. Religion has always harnessed the technology of the society around it in order to help it achieve spiritual highs. I mean, walk into your local cathedral and look at the architecture bringing you up towards heaven. Listen to the resounding chords of, you know, To Be a Pilgrim.
Yes, but that wasn't written, I mean, on drugs,
but it still removed you from the mundanity of your everyday life.
Religion, for example, there's a very, very long tradition, a temperance tradition, for example, in the Christian religions, where they have struggled against the appalling corruption of something like alcohol. I mean, this, what these people are saying is corrupting young people. You're playing a satanic role. You are saying, look, if you take a drug, then this is the way you'll feel. And in fact, you don't know how people will feel. You don't know what you're doing to young people.
Can I ask Nicholas how you respond to the idea of it being satanic in its effect?
No, to corrupt young people is satanic.
Well, to corrupt.
Well, I think I'm accused of one being satanic, but that's what you're saying, isn't it?
Well, I think it seems to me that you're saying to young people, this is wonderful, do it.
I'm not. I'm trying to give the facts, because I think the facts have been wildly distorted.
Absolutely.
I'm not saying to it. If you read my book, you'll see. But coming on to the spiritual effects, if you look at the Christian tradition, many of the saints, like Ignatius de Loyola, they had their spiritual experience under the influence of, well, in his case it was wound fever, which was very similar to a drug effect. Well, why do you think a chemical that produces the same mechanism in the brain